Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today we're focusing on Neighbors from Hell. You know I love a neighbor story, right? And our first story was deleted but has been recovered, titled Whole Neighborhood is Being Tormented by One Family. About 12 years ago, a new family moved in 2 doors down from us with a little boy. They seemed nice enough at first and they kept to themselves most of the time. The son was very sweet and liked to come over to talk when I was younger. The dad was a loudmouth, but he didn't cause any problems, and our other neighbors agreed that overall they seemed like a nice family. They had another son. The boys grew up and now they've become the worst people imaginable. Some examples over the last few years. The kids learned racial slurs from their father very young and started screaming them at any non-white passing person who happened to be outside at the same time as them. The family stocks up on M80s every year and fires them off at all hours of the day. Sometimes early in the morning, sometimes in the middle of the day, sometimes at night, without warning. They also let the children light them themselves. They almost blew up a car once. I'm assuming we're talking about fireworks here, right? Just did a quick Google and it's, M80 firecrackers. The parents bought their sons 4-wheelers for Christmas one year and they drove them full speed around the neighborhood. We live in the suburbs across the street from a school, so many almost accidents have happened. They don't stop at the stop signs or pay attention to cars on the road. Everyone in the neighborhood hates them. When the 4-wheelers weren't enough, they got dirt bikes. They rev them as loud as they can for hours to the point where things hanging on our walls shake, and of course they drive them around in the streets as well. The father installed a trucker horn on his truck and likes to honk it to signal his buddy across the street so they can talk, yell to each other from opposite sides of the road. They also get into honking wars and go back and forth until someone screams at them to stop. The horns are as loud as the horns they play during NFL games when someone scores a goal. If there's an outdoor party somewhere on our street, the kids will circle around the street on their bikes and try to spit at people from a distance. Recently, I, 23 female, had to stop going on runs outside because the father and his friend across the street started waiting for me to return home so they can throw poppers and firecrackers on the ground as I pass by to scare me. Not to bring politics into this, but they've decorated their yard with Trump decorations and the dad films their youngest son on the 4-wheeler driving up and down the street decked out head to toe in Trump memorabilia. They'll also scream about Trump randomly out of nowhere. I don't know who they are talking to. Nobody has any signs out promoting Kamala or any other candidate really, so I don't know why they're so angry. A teenage boy that lived on our street brought his friend home from school, and while walking in his house, the friend, who was black, stepped on crazy neighbor's lawn. The dad freaked out on him, called the cops because he was acting suspicious. The dad finds it funny to throw firecrackers at his own children sometimes. I watched this happen while one of the boys was trying to cut the grass. About an hour ago, another honking war started. I had a really bad day, my head was pounding, and they just wouldn't stop. I opened my window and screamed at them to knock it off. The neighbor has been silent ever since, but I know they'll retaliate in a few days. I really regret doing it in hindsight, but it's the only thing that gets them to stop. Naturally, nobody else in our neighborhood likes them. Other neighbors have called the cops on them numerous times, but they have taken too long to get here, and by the time the cop car rolls around, they've gone inside or left for the day. Yelling at them anonymously usually gets them to stop for a few days, but it always starts up again later. One time a cop even parked on our street and stayed there for a while, but of course the family decided not to go outside that day. Every year they get worse, and I don't think they'll be moving anytime soon. How can we get them to stop? We're desperate at this point. I think all you can do on this is start documenting everything. I mean, throwing firecrackers at people? Surely that's got to be illegal, right? I'll just literally be putting cameras up everywhere to film as much as I can of this kind of behavior because that is absolutely wild. It goes just beyond being, a nightmare neighbor to almost dangerous territory in some places. You've got harassment in there, racism as well, reckless driving. It just goes on with these people. The commenter does say to OP, you will need to file a police report and potentially a restraining order. I second installing security cameras. Between you and all the other neighbors who've had issues with them, all of you should call to back each other up. The NFH may assume they're being targeted because they don't like being called out on their vile behavior, but it has to be done or it will never stop. Those type of people never stop unless they're dealt with by law enforcement and others putting a stop to their obnoxious behavior. And another commenter says video everything. If they're setting off fireworks, there's definitely regulations on it. Catch it on video and state you're concerned about fires. If your local cops have a non-emergency line, I'd call them directly. Ours always come out if there's a potential fire hazard since folks have caught homes on fire before and there's local ordinances about fireworks safety. Reach out to the zoning and codes as well if you have questions about anything. If they have easily visible violations or codes, folks are more than happy to drive by and issue citations. It's low-hanging fruit. If they're throwing fireworks at people, that's a 911 call right then and there. Pull all the numbers in your phone to be able to call a person as soon as something happens. People like this get away with shit because everybody else lets them. But what about you guys? What would you do in that situation? Bloody hell. It's always worrying because, like, with those kinds of people, it's always a worry that they're going to retaliate in some way as well. And I say that from an area that came up with some wild-ass behavior as well. You know, they wouldn't care if the police was involved. Sometimes they would still retaliate just because they have to get a one-up on you. But I totally get why absolutely the police should be involved in this situation, is documenting that behavior and then stamping down on it as soon as possible. But what do you guys think? Let us know your thoughts. Let's move on to another story. Now our next story comes from Euphoric Grab 9861 and says, neighbor thinks I breed rats in my greenhouse. I've lived in the house I own with my husband for 12 years. It's a terrace built in the 1860s with lots of things like coal chutes and cellars that undercut other people's properties. We live near farmland and were told when we bought it that rats were in the area and to keep a good supply of rat wire to keep them out. There's never been any sign that there have been rats in our house, but we know others have had problems. On to the weirdness. My neighbor and I were on decent terms until he decided not to be and called the council on us for having a compost bin. The water company for something that was found to be his fault. They ruined my 40th birthday by constantly calling round, and he tried to call the police because I laughed at another neighbor calling him a bellend. He threw a fit when we decided we'd no longer communicate with him unless absolutely necessary. So he started claiming to anyone who would listen that I trap and breed rats in my greenhouse. He loudly told an exterminator he called after seeing one whole rat in my garden this, and I was amused and appalled. I found out when having a casual chat with another neighbor at the bus stop that he'd been making these claims for over a year, and then heard it again from the man himself telling someone else. Not once has he mentioned it to us, and he will use any excuse to try and get us to talk to him. The exterminator was adamant that if I was breeding and keeping rats in a 3x2 meter greenhouse, then the smell and noise would be unbearable, but the neighbor is undeterred from his delusion. His partner has been in my greenhouse when I showed her my tomato plants and asked if she wanted the excess crop, so she's been trying to tell him that he's delusional too. We've installed cameras in case he tries to take matters into his own hands to prove that I am the rat queen, and have been loudly talking about how ridiculous this situation is in his earshot. We know he has issues and has fixated on me as a malign force. Another reason for the cameras. We're compiling a spreadsheet of his odd and harassing behavior over the years. I know I'm not breeding rats and do not fear anything he tries to do, but wanted to tell internet strangers to get it off my chest in the hope that someone will find it amusing. That guy sounds absolutely wild and clearly has some issues going on, and I think all you can really do is keep going on with your spreadsheet of the harassing behavior like we saw in the last story. Just document it until you can actually do something about it. It's a shame that you have to wait that long when he's the one taking the piss here. It just gave me a flashback to my youth when there was one of the neighbors in one of the flats opposite who was on the ground floor, so he had a back garden at the time, and he would keep chickens. And it started like with 1 or 2 chickens, but by the end there was like fucking 30 of these things, and they were jumping on the walls, they were out over in the park, they were all over the place. Eventually someone called and I think they got taken away and hopefully rehomed, but I was too young and didn't know too much about it apart from there was just one day shitloads of chickens there, and it's like, where was he getting these chickens from? But what do you guys make of that one? Let us know your thoughts and let's have another story. This one's from Sad Reputation 8339 and says, I held neighbors hostage with a sword. Okay, one of my neighbors is elderly and has a brain tumor. She's not the bad neighbor. I helped her get her bills on auto pay, mowed her lawn, apply for a loan, fix some things, drove her to the hospital, etc. I was happy to help her out and check on her and chat with her. She had changed her will from leaving her house to her church instead of her family. When they found out, her church swooped in and drove her to the bank immediately to take me off of her account. They got me taken off of all the bills. They said nothing to me. It was a bit abrupt and shocking, but kind of a relief because I know they have staff that can better manage it all than I could. It was a bit overwhelming as I'm autistic, and it was a relief that she was getting more resources and more attention from the church that she loves, including starting to have Bible study at her house weekly. They drilled into her that she should not trust me. So when the lady overdosed on pain medication shortly after, she hallucinated that I held her hostage in her house with a sword. My parents also live in the neighborhood. They were accused of stealing her water. There were people in her inaccessible attic playing a loud TV, which she doesn't even own because she spends a whole day reading the Bible instead, etc. The police were out 6 times that night and didn't even knock on my door because it was a clear mental breakdown. She was hospitalized for a month but is back home now. A member couple, big in the church that lives down the road, started telling neighbors what this lady was saying in the hospital and that they didn't know if I did it or not. Seriously, they started spreading the rumor that there was something wrong with me and they suspected I did it. I stopped over to talk to them after hearing it from multiple neighbors, teary-eyed and barely holding it together because I was so hurt that anybody could believe this. They coldly told me to stay away from her because she is terrified of me. Then they had the church immediately call me and tell me to stop talking to the neighbors about the woman's business. It hurt, but I've very carefully done that. They've since started a non-stop vendetta against me over the past 6 months. I generally don't respond because I know that husband has alcohol problems and I'm sensitive to that. The latest, yesterday they posted on a local Facebook crime page under a report of an arrested pedo to watch out for me and my husband because I lure neighborhood kids into my house with computer games and Halloween overload. I decorate the yards of neighbors that want it and do many houses in the neighborhood. They didn't use my name, but it's blatantly obvious who they were talking about. So I replied to the thread welcoming anybody to peek in my windows and knock on my door at any time. I'm exhausted. The guy with the alcohol problem is an ex-cop, so he feels he is untouchable. I've always lived in a very rural areas before retiring here, so I'm just confused and overwhelmed by this. People suck. I feel like I need to go back to being a hermit, but I get joy out of allowing neighborhood kids to treat me like grandma and spoil them. Looking for any opinions or advice on how to handle this. This has already gone way too far, so I'd stop trying to handle this socially and switch to actually protecting yourself legally and just, again, feels like you say this every time on Neighbor Stories, documenting everything, screenshotting everything, the Facebook posts, the messages, the dates, the witnesses, write down like a timeline of events. If neighbors heard the rumors directly, ask if they're willing to confirm that. And also, I don't know how it works, but I'll be potentially looking into to be able to report this anonymously or however you do it as elder abuse, because at the moment they're isolating her from people around her and influencing her finances at the same time. But the top commenter says defamation lawsuit against this church. This church sounds evil and posting lies. They're trying to steal her money. Also, sounds like that church is preying on her and manipulating her. Gather information, dates, times, the lies, and get a lawyer. Feel like being a jerk says you might also want to tell the family her church might be taking advantage of her. If she has a brain tumor, she might not be mentally fit to change her will, and they are being opportunistic. You could maybe also talk to your local office for elder abuse to see what the options there are. Commenter replies him, might be. They spent 6 months actively slandering someone who had this lady's best interest at heart, effectively blocking them from assisting and protecting her. Abuser tactics, specifically isolation. The church knows what it's doing. Opie responded saying she thinks family stole from her, so she wants nothing to do with them. To be fair, they did clear every single item out of her house, not even a toothbrush left behind. Lived 6 to 12 months before I met her. Cleared out all her bank accounts, didn't pay her bills, got her and themselves fancy phones in her name, took them all and let the account go to collections for over $3,000. Negotiating lower payments on that one was fun. Totally fixed up her house inside, including mitigating the smoke and damage, painting, new floors, etc., and moved her into their house when she got out of the hospital previously. So I think the goal was to have her live with them for the rest of her life and sell her house. I have no idea if their motives were all pure or not in the beginning, because all I got was the ugly aftermath from her perspective. So anyways, family wants nothing to do with her, and she wants nothing to do with them. Opie did update this one and said, I should clarify, this couple are the ones with a non-stop campaign. Mostly the husband, I suspect. This latest thing was posted under the wife's account, but I don't believe she wrote it. The church has left me alone completely since that last communication to stop spreading her business so many months ago. I'm staying out of the elderly ladies and church's business completely, even though I really miss our relationship. I want absolutely nothing to do with anything over at the elderly lady's house. I'm happy she's getting care and attention and stuff, regardless of the intentions good or bad. They're even having Bible study at our house, which I know makes her super happy, so I'm truly happy for her. I'm assuming that meant her house. It's this couple that just go to the church that I'm afraid of. Really, just the guy. From what I hear, his wife basically has no say. She joined and fully embraced the church when this very religious elderly lady was trying to help her cope with the marriage. Honestly, don't know if the guy goes to church at all. 2. I found out that my neighbor, who this guy also despises and is out to get, saw the church people park on her lawn for Bible study before the pedo comment was posted. She left a note on their vehicles asking them to please not park on her lawn. They knocked on her door a bit later and apologized and said they would not park there again, and she pointed out a vacant neighbor's house with a big driveway they could park on. The pedo comment went up apparently within about 45 minutes of that happening, as far as I can figure out. This neighbor lumps us together in hate like we are the axis of evil, so I suspect that's what set him off to this degree. I envisioned that his wife was at the church meeting and told him after, and he probably lost it. It would be like him to be visibly intoxicated midday based on every time I've met him. So it doesn't make anything better, but seems ever so slightly less random than it did before. Thankfully, my direct neighbors are all very understanding and have been very supportive today and last night. OP was talking back and forth about how they become friends and various other things like that at the same time, but then also came in with a final edit and said, "The poster woman just came over and profusely apologized. We all cried and talked for a very long time. She said she was completely wrong and feels horrible about it. I don't know if neighbors talked to her or what happened, but she was a completely different person from when I met her before. She didn't detail what the exact cause was, but explained that she was hearing noise from different places and she just let her make her think things that were wrong and ugly and not true. She let others convince her of things, and that's just not who she is as a person." I'm still sitting here bawling, honestly. I feel so much better. I know these others are still out there believing whatever they believe and talking trash, but I know that just goes hand in hand with some people and drinking. I told her I'm an absolute open book. Don't be afraid to ask me anything ever. You can come in and look through my computers and personal belongings. You can tell me you don't like one of my Halloween decorations and I will take it down, no questions asked. I've told that to all neighbors I've met over the past years. Open book, no secrets, and no hidden agendas ever. She said that's completely unnecessary to offer and that she was in the wrong and hopes I forgive her. Right now she's at my parents' house asking them for forgiveness too. Our conversation did veer into religion to a limited degree, and that was just fine if not good. We definitely understand each other much better now, even if we don't have the same beliefs. I'm still not offering to help anybody with anything though going forward. Gonna stick with anonymous anytime I can help someone. I'm never risking going through this again. I'm not mentally built for this. On that note, 2 kids knocked after she left, wanting to play. Had my husband to tell them to come back in half an hour so I can clean up the tears and act like a normal human being when they come in. But that coincidence actually makes me feel a little more like things are back to normal. I just want to thank everybody here for the support. It very truly made a difference in my life these past days. I didn't have a lot of friends, so being able to bounce this off you was all amazing. Thanks to each of you." And I'm so glad this had somewhat of a positive ending for OP, and that this person did apologize to them in the end, because OP just sounds like a lovely, gentle soul and didn't deserve this to begin with. But what do you guys make of it? Let us know your thoughts and let's move on to another story. Our next story comes from Kanga Khan and says, "Got called a Karen for asking neighbors not to use our driveway. We bought our single family home 6 months ago after years of dealing with neighbors from hell and other random neighborhood happenings. I thought surely things would calm down. I knew there would be new challenges, but I think I've just finally reached the boss level. Neighbors across the street have been insufferable this whole time, bumping music, rattling our walls, people constantly coming and going, revving motorcycles, shooting fireworks off that land in our yard / on our house. They have 8 to 10 people living there with a car for each person, so that means more spaces are taken on the street every day, which is fine. We have 2 cars and don't need a ton of street parking anyway, but they love to use our driveway multiple times per day when backing in and out and turning around. Most of the time this wouldn't bother me, but they started pulling halfway up to our garage, getting out of their car and rummaging around in it for who knows what. I finally had enough of it today and asked them to stop pulling in our driveway for their own personal use, so I got called a Karen for that. This is on top of multiple other issues we've had with them that could each have their own post many paragraphs long. I'm hardcore mourning our first time homebuyers experience. This was supposed to be a happy, fun, exciting time in our lives, but it's just turned into something driving a wedge between us and ruining our mental health. I'm honestly at a loss, and we're already thinking of selling but don't want to lose money on this. OP comes in with an edit the day after and says, "Edit, this is the day after I was called a Karen, and another one of their occupants decided to back his car up onto our driveway, but leave it on the sidewalk area, so it's technically not on our property. He just sat in it for a few minutes, blocking us from getting out." Edit 2. I appreciate all the responses and kind words. Thank you to everyone for the people saying caltrops or spike strips. I don't actually think that is legal. I might be considered booby trapping if I'm not careful. We're planning to save up and get the front yard fenced in, complete with a driveway gate in the spring. And yes, we already have 2 exterior cameras. Edit 3, we've come to the series finale, y'all. The main perpetrator and his girlfriend got into another big blowout argument today, and he's getting kicked out. Thanks for all the love, we'll return for season 4 in a few months. I just don't understand why people want to be disrespectful like that. Just even turning in someone's drive like that constantly, it just takes the piss, doesn't it? I've told you about, there's a local school and lots of people drop their children off in cars. But there's a little area, like a little cul-de-sac, and loads of cars go down there and they park in front of people's drives and even at some points parked on their drives. I once saw someone getting out on someone's drive and emptying the rubbish from their car into the person's bins. That's what, you cheeky bastards. Eventually these people did start putting out cones on their driveways and stuff, but I've seen people move them as well. But there was loads of suggestions on this one of bollards or, calling a tow truck if they park on it, etc. Putting cones up, all kinds of ways to get around it. It sounds like OP's got a plan by putting up a fence and a gate, which sounds like a good plan to me. But what do you guys make of this one? Have you ever had any driveway drama before? Let us know your thoughts and let's have another story. Our next story is titled, "Neighbor from Hell Lost His Parking Spaces, Got Evicted and Picked Up Criminal Charges." I bought a property with a weird layout a few years ago. The previous owner owned 2 neighboring properties, sold one to me and kept the other as a rental property. As part of the deal, they set up an easement to use one of the driveways on my property to access theirs, but there was another driveway on the other side of the property that led to the rear of their house, with some parking spaces on their side. I allowed the tenants next door to use the second driveway in addition to the easement one because I didn't want to move in and immediately start making enemies with my neighbors. It became clear pretty quickly that this was an issue as the tenant would floor it through my driveway almost every time he came and went. Then he got a Harley and started revving it up and mashing the throttle as he rode by my house. I asked him to slow down, but he kept doing it. Then one day it was raining. He tore down the driveway again and was going so fast by the end of the driveway that when he braked to enter the road, he locked up all 4 tires and slid down my driveway about 30 feet. I was done at this point, and I told him he couldn't use my private driveway anymore and had to use the easement driveway. I put up a fence a week later to block access, so he lost the use of the driveway and use of 2 parking spaces on his side. Then he started harassing me every time he saw me, threatening to beat me up, threatening to drive into planters I put up around my property. He screamed at me to take my security cameras down. No way, then tampered with my security system. I filed for a temporary restraining order against him and was given a court date. A few weeks later, he was going out to his car parked on the street and he got jumped by 4 men who curb stomped his arm. I think it was a drug deal gone bad or something like that. He was put into a medically induced coma for 3 weeks. I started painting the fence and his girlfriend came outside and asked me to stop. When I told her to go inside if the smell of paint bothered her, she called the police. Then he filed a counter-restraining order against me, claiming that my actions had forced him to park on the street, knowing that it was a dangerous area. Lol. And that was harassing them with my painting. They kept delaying the case with continuances. One night I saw on my security camera that he was patrolling my property and dropped what looked like a handgun, which he shouldn't have had because of the restraining order. That delayed the court procedures again, and he had to provide evidence that he had surrendered his firearms, something he didn't do when the case was originally filed. Finally, after almost a year, I filed for the restraining order and 9 months of being under one myself. The day of the court hearing arrived. He lost his temper in court and argued with the judge and my lawyers. I had a mountain of security camera footage and all he had was a testimony from his girlfriend and another neighbor who didn't help his case at all. I got the restraining order granted against him and mine was dropped. One day I noticed some lights on in what was supposed to be a vacant unit next door, and I reached out to the owner who I'd been in contact with. It turns out he broke into the unit and was having a friend squat there. He only came with the police and got the squatter out and boarded up the doors and windows. My neighbor kept talking to my security camera, waving flags in front of it, standing in front of it, and playing videos on his phone. All of this was in violation of the no contact order, so I kept calling the police and sending them the security camera footage. Finally, his landlord filed for eviction, but my neighbor kept evading service. It took about 6 months for them to finally be able to serve eviction papers by posting them. They went to court and he was evicted. I looked up court records for him and found out he was charged with 4 misdemeanor counts on violating the restraining order, and he failed to appear for the arraignment. So, to summarize, instead of just slowing down and driving like a normal person, my neighbor lost the use of the driveway, lost his parking spots, lost full use of one of his arms, lost his house, and picked up a restraining order. 4 criminal charges and now a failure to appear. I just don't get it. All you gotta be is a good neighbor and you get a good deal. OP seemed like a really reasonable person from the very beginning. All he wanted was not to take the piss. Don't be revving your car up or your motorbike up down the side of his house. Don't be speeding. Again, just don't take the piss. Which he did. And soon as OP gave him a chance, said, "Can you not do that?" he doubled down. Talk about bloody self-sabotage, right? Crikey. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? What do you make of neighbor stories? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Maybe you got your own. Don't forget to share them over on r/Mark Narrations. I'd love a Mark Narrations neighbor episode. But just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being a part of it all. Truly is absolutely amazing. And hopefully I'm going to see you in the next one. Take care and much love.